Well, the rumours have come true. A couple of years ago, there were kind of murmurs online about tapes not being made anymore, and well, tape stock is dwindling. I mean, at this point, me just holding this up to the camera is enough to make some people go weak at the knees. And if you actually look, say you're the girlfriend or boyfriend of someone who films, you'll just see them clamoring at the screen, just scratching it like a rabid dog looking for some scraps. It's unfortunately true. Tape stocks are dwindling and it's getting way too expensive for most normal people who aren't going to be spending upwards of $50 for like 5 tapes. So, unfortunately, the necessary evil has come in. We need to talk about these things, tapeless solutions. So what can you expect from today's video? Well, we've got a pros and cons of different tapeless solutions with Al Hodgson of Owl Skateboards.
Hey, check these out. These just came in the post today.
Oh, hello.
Like the VX mugs.
Oh, ooh, gorgeous. We've also got a demo of the DN60 by Al himself. We've also got a demo of the FS100 by yours truly, which then doesn't work for some reason. Why does that stop working? And we've also got a demonstration of the MRC1 by Pedro.
What's happening?
And that's it. I say that's it like it's a 10-minute TED Talk, but in fact this is a somewhat important video. So hopefully it's entertaining enough and hopefully it's educational enough. So before we get into all of that fun stuff, I just want to give you a quick, brief guide into the history of tapeless solutions. So the earliest one I can find that came out was the Firestore FS4, which is obviously quite similar to the FS100. Now, I can tell you more about the FS100 as it's what I own. The FS100 came out as a replacement for P2 cards with the HVX200. At the time, a P2 card was nearly $1,000, near here or there. But this was only a couple of $100, and for one P2 card you might only get 16 minutes of recording, at the time obviously in around 2006. With something like this, you were looking at upwards of an hour in HD. So obviously these things were quite popular with the people who were making the transition to HD. The FS4 came out just before the FS100, and I believe it did do HD, but it didn't do the DVC Pro HD that the FS100 can do. The Sony MRC1 was actually an added extra for a Sony HDV camera, which came out in around 2007, 2008. It literally just slotted into the back of the camera and you could have a backup of whatever you're recording to tape, or you could record directly to the card. And so that's what it was. It wasn't just like its own unit, it was actually just kind of an added extra which you could buy alongside for the camera. I think I've wasted enough of your time. Let's just get into the meat and potatoes of this video. This is going to be a conversation with Al, where we talk about different types of tapeless solutions and their pros and cons.
Can you see me all right?
Yeah, actually, it looks like you've actually prepared yourself. It's incredible.
Only slightly, not really. But yeah, I sent you like a PDF, and the PDF has everything, essentially everything that I've come to learn about all these things. There's kind of a few different units. I can go through them each individually. But
oh wow, you've really done your homework on this.
Well, it's all stuff that like I kind of ended up learning just because I put up ages ago, that Instagram post about the DN60, and then since then a lot of people like contacted me because there's a few sellers who sold a lot of these things, but there weren't really any users you could speak to. So then loads of people started messaging me to talking about the DN60, and loads of people started like asking me questions. So I just ended up learning quite a lot about all of them. And
you kind of unofficially became the spokesman for all of these brands, basically.
It was weird though, because it's like I didn't like expect that. The DN60 was the only one I've actually used, and I really like it. But like I was researching the others to see if if one came up, would I buy it? And then ended up like looking into all of them and like finding the pros and cons, because they all have like quite specific pros and specific cons. The reason I did that post for the DN60 was because I felt like people were starting to talk about tapeless options, but no one was actually like talking about ways that it could work when you're actually properly filming. Like, it's all well and good finding out that the technology is there, but actually implementing it is completely different. You know, that's a completely different game. So yeah, so the DN60, it usually is about £300 to £400. I don't know what that is in dollars, but I think it's actually usually around the same in dollars because it's a bit cheaper in America. One of the biggest benefits about this unit, even though it's probably one of the oldest and one of the the most low tech, is that it runs off AA's batteries, and that's the one thing that sets it apart from pretty much all the others, because the others either run off Sony batteries or their own kind of bespoke battery units,
like inbuilt, yeah,
which are rare and hard to get. But the thing is, with this, it's great because you can just buy, you know, a pack of rechargeable Duracells and they last 3 to 4 hours. So that's kind of all you need for this one. And that's, yeah, to me, that's a bit of a game changer, because the others, their battery issues are one of the biggest problems with them. But I'll come to that when I talk about them. Another really big pro about this one is that it has the back, like the screw mount on the back. And that means that you can side mount it using an L bracket really simply. Whereas pretty much all of the others either have it one on the bottom or none at all, or it's on their housing, which is bulky. So again, that's a really big benefit of this one.
Keeps it a bit neater.
It's neater. It's pretty much the neatest one, and it's also really lightweight. So it's like the best of that. But then the cons of this one, the drawbacks, is old. So with the CF cards, CFs come in like a UDMA rating. I think 7 is the most up-to-date one, and this supposedly only supports up to 6, UDMA 6. So you kind of need older CF cards, like I've got here. They've like these ones, and this is just UDMA, but you need the SanDisk Extreme ones, but not the newest ones. So you kind of need second-hand SanDisk cards, which are hard to get hold of. That's a thing that I've had a lot of people messaging me about saying, hey, I've got these SanDisk cards, but there's these little glitches and stuff, and it's supposedly because of the UDMA 7 cards. So you need the older cards. That's important. But they also need to be the high quality older cards, you know? So it's one of those things that you'll see on eBay or Facebook Marketplace or fucking some, you know, car boot sale or something. Like you'll find them, but they're just a bit of a pain. Like I got mine on Gumtree. I got like 15 quid, and they're like 20 quid each. So I just got really lucky. But other people I know have like spent 30 quid on a 16 gig card. So yeah, and they also only go up to 32 gig. So they only support up to 32 gig. The 64 gig ones, supposedly it doesn't support. So that's another thing to bear in mind. And yeah, and so the other thing with this, which is like so I found out about these from Mark Nicholson's video on YouTube. And I think he also did something on Instagram a few years back. And that was the first time I ever saw about this whole tapeless thing. And he was talking about how, because of the VX1, and this is specifically the VX1000, you can't drag and drop files like you can with some other cameras. You have to capture. So you have to capture off this. You can't drag and drop. I think it's the only one where that's the case. But there's like a known audio glitch. So when you try and drag and drop files, there's like this horrible audio. So basically it's just not worth it. Well, it's just like it's just white noise, you know? So for this, I think this might be the only one where you actually have to literally capture like you would with tapes. It's much faster than tapes to capture because the fast forwarding is really, really quick. But generally speaking, yeah, you still have that same tape capture faff that you do with tapes. And also one thing that does happen sometimes is when you're capturing, it will drop frames, and you can tell because you hear audio dropouts. But if you go back to recapture it, it'll be fine. It's never on the actual footage. It's always just in the capture. Like the actual footage recording is perfect of all of these capture devices. Oh yeah, and the last con with the setup that I've got with this L bracket thing is that in order to change the batteries, you have to deconstruct the whole rig and then put it back together, which is a bit of a pain if you're like mid-session filming, but the batteries last for like 4 hours of use, so you never really need to worry about that too much. So.
Does it have an like an indicator light on it, or like does it beep when it's like low on battery?
No, it'll give you the low battery warning. It'll give you a low battery warning, and yeah, you have to. Oh, that's another thing with all of these units. I think using them with VX1000s. I only know with the VX1, but supposedly, I think with all of them, you have to use the record function on the unit, not on the camera, because automatically, if you don't have a tape in the camera, it doesn't register recording, regardless of whether you've got something plugged into it or not. I don't know if that's 100% true, but like...
I know the Firestore, because mine came with my HVX, and you set something up in the manual, and you can hit record on the camera, and then it records to either to the card and the Firestore or whatever. So I think that is primarily just a VX1000 issue, which is annoying, but yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't see that you've got something plugged into it. So when you you have to record using the external recorder function on the units, which is fine because it gives you a recorder, it gives you like a red light to say that you're recording, but it also means that you're relying on this, and you just have to keep an eye on the time code and the light.
Make sure it's actually running.
Yeah, check it's actually running, yeah. So that's the DN60. Like, that's the basic rundown. That's the one I know the most about, obviously, because I've got one. But the other one, so yeah, the Sony HVR MRC1. So these tend to be like, these are the most common ones. Like, they're the ones that you see on eBay much more often, I think. I don't really know why, but I guess they were just more produced, especially for the UK and Europe. So they tend to be the cheapest as well. They can go from anywhere from like 150 to 400, like, but I've seen them up for like 150, and they're the most common and cheapest. So they're like that's a really good thing for them. They're really hard wearing, so they're really sturdy. They use VX batteries, but see, this is kind of like a blessing and a curse with these ones, because they use the VX batteries, which is obviously great, because if you're a VX filmer, you're going to have a load of these batteries. But the issue is when you put the battery on, you put the housing, you have to put the housing on in order to put the battery on. And then you've actually like really bulked out the unit. Additionally to that, you've got rid of any potential of back mounting. So with the DN60, you have this screw, you can just go straight into the back. Whereas with the Sonys, the MRC1, you're basically putting a battery onto the back. So there's nothing attached to, you've just got the back of a Sony battery. And that actually makes it quite difficult when it comes to rigging. And that's, I would say, the biggest con of the biggest like downside of these Sony units is their mounting to the VX, because there's no obvious points of
it's not really, I mean, the Sony recorders were purpose built for like only 2 cameras, I think. They were supposed to slot onto the battery compartment of those, so it kind of makes sense why it'd be difficult to mount them to literally anything else. Exactly. It's still annoying, yeah.
Yeah, so it's really awkward to fit to them. So if it wasn't for that, this would be the one I would say go for, because it's the cheapest, the most common, pretty much the only one that you can still find just on eBay regularly. Like, everything else is rare as fuck, so it's hard to find that. The Sonys use CF cards as well. Yeah, it's just the no mounting thing that's the hardest thing. There's a screw thread in the bottom, but that's not fucking helpful when you're like, what are you gonna do? You do like that, or it doesn't really, unless you. The only thing I could think of is that you do the same thing. I don't know, you make some sort of L bracket or U bracket where it goes like from the bottom, and then maybe there's a way to have a longer L bracket so it fits on the bottom and it screws into the bottom of the Sony, and then into that, and then something else on the bottom. Like a kind of, I've seen people use just like plates, like something like that,
Yeah.
And then they have a hole there and a hole there with a screw. They go to the bottom of the Sony and the bottom of the VX.
So it's basically just like sticking it out like that instead of having it on the side.
But again, you've got the same problem. It's weighted weirdly, and it's going to be It's just not going to be as sturdy as an L bracket. It's just not as stable. It's probably, again, the best second option, I would say, but I don't know. I'm not convinced. So I haven't seen anything that fully convinced me, but it's definitely, to me, the second best option to a DN60. Because I will happily I happily will capture footage like you do with tape and deal with all that shit just because it's so secure and it's so sturdy and it's so
the design of it is just perfect for
it's
what
the
it
most
is. Yeah.
perfect. It's the most perfect. None of this shit's perfect. But
Yeah.
it's the most perfect. Other than that, then you've also got the focus enhancements range. So I've I included them all on that PDF. But with the focus, you've got the FS4, the FS100, the FS5, and the FS200. I think the FS4 and FS100 are kind of variants of the same. FS5 and 200 are variants of the same. They're kind of like upgrades of each other. You have with the Firestore. You say you have the Firestore.
I have the Firestore FS100. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So something that I've found, and I found a little bit confusing, is that supposedly there are consumer brand variants of each of these focus things. So you'll have the focus enhancements Firestore FS4 or whatever, and then there's like a JVC one specifically, and then there's like a Panasonic one specifically of this FS100. I can't, or it was made specifically for that camera. I'm not sure. It's quite confusing. There's very little information on the internet because
from what I know, the only difference between the FS4 and the FS100 is hard drive space and the fact that it can do DVC Pro HD. Those are the two only differences, and even then with the FS4 you can just rip the hard drive out of it. It's just like a 2.5 inch laptop drive, I believe, so you can just take the hard drive out of it. And I mean, if you're using it for a VX, you don't need the HD option anyway.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, I haven't used these. I've talked to a few people who do use them for VX filming. What I do know is the FS100 tends to be the one that's the most common. The FS4 and the FS100, they tend to be the ones that you'll be able to find on eBay every now and then. The newer ones, which are the FS5 and FS200 or H200 Pro, they're much newer and they're much more expensive and much rarer. And it's also when focus enhancements changed to VTech, like a different brand. They got bought out by VTech, maybe, I don't know, but VTech, I don't know. So they're much rarer and they're harder to come by and they're much more expensive. But they're like much newer, probably much more like user friendly. But I guess I'll go through each one individually. So you've got the Focus FS4. That's got like I think 60 to 100 gig hard drive. You can drop the files by USB, I believe, and it's like pretty common.
I don't actually. You can't do. There's no USB port on these. You have to plug it in as a hard drive.
Right. Okay. So I didn't know that. So that's really good to know. So that's, in a way, that's kind of a con. That's like a bad part of it. Because
I think you can either capture it. I'm not sure. I think you can use it as like a hard drive, but I've only used it for capturing myself.
Okay, well that's good to know. But yeah, with the cons, so it has a screw thread on the back of the housing, but it's quite bulky. So you can do the same as the DN60 with the housing, but it's like twice as thick.
Yeah.
And it's probably about twice as heavy as well.
Oh, it's really heavy. It's at least, I mean, for the HVX anyway, when you put it all together, like trying to attach it, it's at least an extra 5, like, I don't know, a couple of kilograms more. It's a heavy, it's like, it's sturdy. It's not going to break, but you really do feel it in your wrists. You're not going to want to have it on for too long, I'll tell you that much.
So that's like a really big deal in that it's really heavy. And that's kind of a real downside to the older Focus models, because they are heavy.
Yeah.
They're bulky and they're good and they have big hard drives, but they're heavy. And again, the battery pack, they come with their own specific batteries, and that's so annoying, because it just means that if you've got a shitty battery, it's almost impossible to find the right battery again, find a replacement. So, and
if you do, you'll probably be paying out the arse just to get it.
Exactly, and probably importing it, all sorts of stuff. So the FS100, like you said, it's got HD function which
that was just an update of the FS4 to support the HVX200, which I find interesting because Panasonic are even like advertising that, even though the only reason that thing exists is because P2 cards were and still are way too expensive for what they actually are. So that's just stupid. But I think that is literally the only difference between the FS4 and the FS100 is the HD support.
Okay, yeah, and it has a bigger hard drive.
Yeah.
It has between 100 and 160 gig, I think.
I think so. I think, again, like I said before, I think you can take the hard drive out and put your own one in there, but I'm not sure what the limitations are of that. Right. So don't quote me on that.
And then as for the kind of newer ones, you've got the FS5 and the FSH200, which is kind of an upgrade of the FS5. So that, again, the benefits of both of them, they've got big hard drives, 100 to 120 gig. They've got good, nice color monitors. You can drag and drop stuff by USB. The FSH200, it uses CF card though, not a hard drive. So I don't know whether you see that as a positive or a negative, but it'll probably take any CF card because it's much newer.
I'd say that's a pro, because compared to, say, like if your hard drive fails, then a hard drive fails, and if you're not tech savvy, you might not be able to even get the hard drive replaced. So I think a CF card's much more preferable.
We need one of these with an SD card slot. That's what we fucking need.
Ooh.
That would just make everything so much easier.
Slim it down, yeah.
Exactly. The cradle, I think the cradle of the H200, FSH200, has a screw option, but I don't know for sure. It's really hard to find information on these online. So with these ones, the newer ones, the newer Focus ones, they're much more expensive. They're much rarer. I mean, I've never seen one for sale in the UK. So I don't know whether it's even worth talking about them for the UK audience, but like they're seemingly super rare in the UK. But they're also really big. They're really bulky. They're like brick-like. But they're bulky, but they're flat. So in terms of rigging options, I was thinking one thing you could do is have like an L bracket with a flat panel, big flat panel, and have some industrial grade Velcro on the flat panel, and then industrial grade Velcro on the back of the newer Focuses. And in theory, you could just Velcro on and off. So that's a mounting option I think is feasible for these Focuses. But to be honest, I wouldn't even fucking use them because they're too expensive. Like they're expensive pieces of kit on a VX, which are just gonna
get broken.
It's gonna get broken, and they've got LCD screens, all this kind of stuff, and it's like
there's too many things to go wrong.
Yeah, I would say these newer models, the newer Focus VTech models, aren't really worth it. If you're gonna get one of the older ones, even though they're fucking heavy. They're just going to be a better option, I think. Actually,
another thing I didn't even consider was like, are there like region locking on these? Is like the DN60, can you record PAL and NTSC into it?
Yeah. So the DN60 allows you both PAL and PAL and NTSC options. I don't know about the Sony. I imagine probably the same, but I have seen with some of these Focus models, it say on the site NTSC model. I don't know about PAL models, but I don't know whether you can probably just switch between the two. I'm not sure, but I know for a fact the DN60 you can record on both. Yeah, that's pretty much the rundown for like all of them. And I just think that like I said at the beginning of the call, the thing that people forget is the actual practicality of filming with it. Like it's all well and good you have this technological option. It's all well and good you have has a hard drive, has all this. It's great. Fab, cool. Have you tried filming with it? Like, have you got a lens? Have you had to like move your camera out of the way when a board's going? And has it hit it? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, does it work? Is it sturdy? Is it stable? Because at the end of the day, that's all that matters with the VX. That it's super fucking stable.
Bloody Nora, that was quite long, wasn't it? I do apologise for how long that was, but with a subject like this, it's quite important that you get as much information as you can. Well, now that that's out of the way, let's just jump into the demonstrations. Firstly, we've got the DN60 with Al. After that, we've got the FS100 with myself. And then thirdly, we've got the MRC1 by Pedro. But first, let's start off with the DN60 by Al.
Alright, so this is the Datavideo DN60 DTE recorder that I use for VX. It's my favourite of all the different models for a few different reasons, but I'll just run you through the outside of the unit. First off, you've got your CF card slot, that's where CF cards go. You've got firewire in the back there. You've got a screw mount on the back of the unit, probably the best placement of a screw mount for all the different DTE recorders. You've got your battery ports in the back. Take 4 AA batteries. You can be rechargeable. Obviously use rechargeable because it's much smarter. You don't have to pay for batteries all the time. That's one of the reasons I really like these units, because you can use these AA's and it means you don't have to rely on a third-party battery pack that often comes with these units, and you can just keep replacing with new AA's. You've got your toggle here that helps you navigate through the different menu systems, and then when you use it to press to record, I'll show you a bit more about that later. On the side you've got a power switch, so you have off all the way to the top, turns the unit on regardless, and then the middle one only turns it on when it's got a power source through Firewire, whether it's a camera or not. I tend to just use the top one because that's the most reliable and it just switches the unit on straight away. So you pop the card in like so. It's got a nice kind of magnetic cover so it stays closed, and then when you want to bring it out, press that little thing in, get it out. Simple. So you can navigate the menus with this little dial. It's actually weirdly, it's opposite to what you might expect to say like an iPhone swiping. It's kind of old school, so it goes clockwise with the movements. Now setup, you want to make sure that your setup is set first. I've got a series of images to show you how I have mine set up. So in the setup function, there's a lot of different setups. I've got some images to show you how I have mine set up as the best way that I do it. But it will differ from NTSC or PAL or all sorts of different things and what you want. But fundamentally, the most important things are in the record setup. You don't want to have set sync to tape on because you don't want it to run off. You want it to generate its own timecode as opposed to using the tape in the camera. That could be quite unreliable because it relies on a functioning timecode in the tape, and if you have any tape issues, which I've had in the past, the sync to tape won't work very well. Setting file type, you want to make sure it's correct to what you use, if you have a Mac or a PC or what you use normally. I always set to MOV QuickTime, this is what I use Mac, so yeah, so setting sync to tape you want off. That's I don't rely on that because the unit can generate its own timecode and it's really successful at doing that. Pre-trigger setup, I think it just records a couple of seconds prior to you filming. I'm not actually sure, but I have mine off because I want to waste card because I know when I'm recording. Time lapse obviously off. Record on power up you want off. You want normal power up. You don't want record on power up because that just means it's recording all the time it's on and you just need it normal. So you power on and it records when you press record. Set record date unnecessary, so go back. So obviously your system setup is quite important, obviously quite specific to your VX, but generally set signal type 60 Hz for NTSC, 50 for PAL. I'm PAL, so that's what I've got. When you set your file system, I use FAT32, but again, you probably can use the other one. Timecode display. So you want an internal timecode. That's really important. You want it to generate its own timecode because if you're using the external timecode, that's the timecode created by the tape, and that can be a bit unreliable. Whereas the internal timecode in this is always reliable. As long as you've got a good Firewire connection and everything on your VX works in that way, internal timecode will is everything you need. Also, external timecode means you need a tape in the camera, because unless you have if you don't have a tape in the camera, it has no timecode to pick up on. So fairly obvious that you probably want to use the timecode in this. Set battery type is also quite important. I've got lithium batteries in here, and you want to make sure that that's set to the batteries that you're using, because otherwise you get kind of faulty battery level readings of like how much battery you have left. DV hidden mode, I have it disabled, and then I go back, and then you save setup when you're happy with everything and you've checked everything works, you've gone through all the settings with your camera. Yeah, basically save the setup when you're definitely happy with what you're going and you know it works. You have 2 different users on there, so you can have 2 different saves. So exit. So in your tools menu, you have an option to make media files. Make media files turns the files that you've captured with this into files that you can drag and drop. However, for VX1, I don't know about other cameras, but for VX1, there's a sound glitch and a sound error that means it doesn't work. So you have to pretty much always capture clips like you would with tapes using the DN60. So make media files is kind of only used if you want to check that if you have any worries that the unit is recording, and you want to see the files on computer. If maybe you can't use the capture function, something's not working with that, you want to make sure that there are files on the unit. Make media files is a good way to see it, although you won't be able to use them because the audio will be broken. As you scroll down, you've got your format media function that empties the card. That's obviously a really handy way of doing it, and it's really fast. Aside from that, you don't tend to use many of the functions in the tools menu. You have your play mode here. This is for capturing. You'll play, and then you go through you can go through the different bins that the card creates. It will create a bin every 100 clips, I think, a new bin. So you can navigate through it this way, but you can also use the functions and the FireWire controls within Premiere or Final Cut when you're going through this when it's plugged in. So you don't have to use the play and rewind functions on the unit. You can use them on the computer much like you would with the capture cam, and you can rewind and fast forward that way. But you do still have to navigate the bins to make sure that you're in the right spot. Yeah, so now onto probably the most important function, the record mode. Access it this way. It's reading no input at the moment. Obviously I'm not plugged into a camera. That's a really important function because when you're using it with the VX, you're looking in the viewfinder slightly less, because obviously this is what you use for reference most of the time, after you've done all your settings and everything. So sometimes you don't realize when the battery is going down on the VX, and sometimes the VX battery will die and you haven't noticed. However, it will read no input straight away. So as long as you're keeping an eye on this, you know when there's something up with the camera. That's a really handy tool to have. You'll get this flashing light when you're running out of CF card space, running out of battery, or you have no input. So keep an eye for that warning light. It only ever flashes like that when something's wrong. The rest of the time, it will be a continuous red light when recording, and it will be off when it's not. So to record, it'll start a time code when you begin recording if everything's correct. You simply use the unit to record. You never use the camera to record, because when there's no tape in the VX, it won't give you an option to press record. It won't work. It just won't register. So you use this, and this will be mounted on the side of your VX if you're smart. Yeah, so it's on for on. Obviously, it's not recording now because there's no camera to record an input from. And then you stop recording with it again. You can sometimes double press by accident, but just keep an eye on the light or keep an eye on the time code, because it will read a time code. And then that will just continue on throughout the whole card. It'll cut on your 99th clip, going into the 100th. It'll cut to it'll go to the next bin and start capturing footage into that bin. A card usually fills about, on average, 3-4 bins. It's about 400 clips on average. So to mount, I use one of these. It's off Amazon. It's actually meant for some sort of flash, but this goes into the bottom of the VX, like so. It goes into the bottom there, and you screw it on, and then the side grabs this from there. Now you have to mount it upside down so the firewire cable can fit in. Because if you have it like that, the firewire cable is blocked. So it's mounted upside down. I'll show you a picture of what this all looks like mounted. But what's really nice about this L bracket is it has grips, has really strong screws and really good grips, and it's perfectly measured, so it slots in really well to the VX, and there's never any rattle or shake. It's always really sturdy. That's really important with these units, I think, because you know you're shaking the VX around like a bit of a nutter most of the time, and you want to make sure it's sturdy and stable. I also have a 30cm firewire cable. This goes round the unit and into the back of the VX. It's 30cm is the perfect length for the DN60 with the VX and this and that L bracket because it's super sturdy. Longer ones create slack, more things to catch on, more things to pull out, whereas there's absolutely no slack at all with a 30cm one. They're a bit more expensive, but if you can get hold of one, definitely do. And last of all, a couple of minor things to always bear in mind with the DN60. When you're capturing, sometimes it'll drop frames. You'll notice that through an audio cutout. There'll be an audio cutout in the capture, and when you go to watch it back, it will have dropped a few frames. Now that's never in the actual footage itself. It's just a capture problem. Must be something to do with not being able to keep up with the capturing process. Maybe these are quite old units, but the actual footage will always be recorded onto the CF card properly, as long as you can capture it. So just recapture it and listen out for the audio dropouts, and that's where you know. Capturing is a bit of a pain in the ass because you have to, you know, it's kind of like tapes. You have to do it, and it takes a long time, but it's quicker than tapes, and you know, it's part of the magic. Aside from that, I can't think of anything else really. They're rare, but if you can get them, they're my favourite ones.
Cheers, Al, for doing that. Hopefully that was helpful for some of you. Let's just jump straight into the FS100 demonstration by yours truly. So this is the Firestore FS100. This is just going to be a quick look at it, and then look through the menus and stuff like that. As you can see, it's quite big, bulky, it's quite heavy as well. Can't tell you exactly how much it weighs, but it's significant. So you got the main display here, you got your menu buttons, you got your playback controls, record, Panasonic propaganda, and then on the top you have the DV in and out, which is where you plug your camera, and then you've also got computer in and out, which is where you plug in your computer. And you've got a control port, which I believe is for LANC controllers like you get on Sony cameras. And then on the bottom is the charger, or you can run it off the mains as well. It's a barrel jack, very similar to a laptop. Let's turn this bloody thing on, shall we? As I've already mentioned, this uses a 2.5-inch disk drive from a laptop, so it has to spin up, and it sounds like a Windows 95 laptop. So here's the main display of it. You've got your stop-start, your record counter, you've also got the remaining time on the hard drive. There's a lock button, display, which changes what kind of counter you've got up there. I just keep it on counter. And then you've got this button, which I have no idea what that does. Let's get into the menus. You've got your record functions here, you've got normal, pre-record, loop record, snap, which I think is literally like a frame grab. Don't know why. And then you've got time lapse, which, I mean, could be useful. Saves you using tape. Sorry. So here's the record format you have. You've got the Panasonic Propaganda DVC Pro HD, DVC Pro 50, which is standard def, 50 megabits per second, 422. I believe it's 422, might be 420. Then you've got DVC Pro and DV. Now, if you're going to be plugging a VX1000 into this, that's the one you're going to want to use. Ignore the DVC Pro part, it's basically the same as DV. And you've got DD drive, and then use external FS100, which I believe you use this feature if you've got two of these and you want to make a backup. If you have two of these, I'd start questioning your decisions. Then you've got the DV formats. This is quite important. You've got all these different flavors of DV. Canopus, which I believe is like an old editing package from like 2006 or so. Then you've got the P2, which is like the MXF format, I believe, which it splits the video, the audio, and all that stuff. Then you've got QuickTime, Avid, you know, stuff like that, quite basic stuff. However, stick to raw DV. There's no other reason why you'd want to use this other stuff. Maybe if you were shooting on a DVX and you wanted to record in 24p, you may want to use the 24p options. However, I have a feeling they'd work quite well with the raw DV. Setup, this is just like, you know, basic stuff here. Got your date and time, which for some reason my particular one can't remember the date and time no matter how many times I've changed it. You know, LCD, alarm, which is like the beep and stuff like that. External control. Now, if you are using this with a Panasonic or a Canon XL2 or something like that, you can control the device from the camera. You can hit the record button on the camera and it'll control this, like a slave master type thing. However, with the VX1000, I don't believe you can do that. I don't even think you can do it with the VX2000 or even maybe the VX2100. If you are an owner of one of these and you know how to do external control, I believe it's called, or Firewire control, there's like different names for it, but it's basically the slave master system where you can hit record on one thing and it'll trigger something else to start recording as well. I don't think you can do that on the VX, which is why a lot of people have been saying when you use a tapeless solution, you're supposed to hit the record on the device itself and not the camera. Then you got these other things here, time code and stuff like that. Organize your files, stuff like that. You can make a reference MOV, which I believe is like a low-res proxy. I might be wrong. Then you got delete clip, format, repair disk, which is very important considering this thing is literally a spinning hard drive that would be mounted to the side of your camera. So you're going to be using those functions quite a lot. System upset, reset, upgrade, stuff like that, you know. Now let me just show you how to format the disk. Hit that, and then hit yes. And then there we go. And then you've got your playback. You can either play the clip, loop it, you know, stuff like that. And then you've got play from the track list or from the real list, so you can go from like different folders or individual clips. Then control, you got local, synchro slave, AVC, and then tapeless. And then there you go. That's basically it. Now that we've had a look at the FS100 a little bit more in detail and had a look at it, you know, physically, I'm now going to show you what it's like to set it up and use with a DV camera. Now, obviously, this is titled Tapeless Solutions for a VX1000 or something like that. This is a region-locked device, stupidly. So this is an NTSC device, so I have to use it with an NTSC camera. So I'm going to be using it with my Panasonic DVX100B. Beautiful little camera. So what I'm going to show you is basically everything you need to do and just how to get set up and running. So you're going to need the device itself, a Firewire cable, which I have here. I believe this is 6-pin or maybe even 8-pin, and this is a 4-pin. So what you're going to want to do is, here we go, get the cable, plug it into the DV in and out here, plug it into there, and then take the 4-pin end and plug it directly into the camera. There we go. So next what I'm going to do is turn on the device itself. Right, that's booting up. And there we go. Right, now that's turned on. Let's turn the Panasonic on, or in anyone else's case, their VX1000 or whatever. Now just shouting at me because I haven't got a tape in it. As you can see, no tape. Okay, so for in the Panasonic's case, you can either use the synchro slave function or tapeless. I've set it to tapeless now. So when I hit the record button on the DVX, which doesn't have a tape in it, by the way, let me just turn it like that. Maybe you can see it a bit better. There we go. So now when I hit record on the DVX, it starts recording on the Firestore FS100. And you'll see a little red lights come up saying that it's recording externally from the Firewire. So now I can zoom in and out, you know, just do my normal recording. And then I can hit stop, and then it saves the file. Piece of piss. So there you go. So you can just put that on the side of the camera or have it around your shoulder, and then you can just hit record on there. It takes a second, and then there you go. As you can see, it is recording. And we've got 457 minutes worth of DV recording we can do. Which is pretty good, pretty good. Whilst I'm here, I might as well show you how I'm recording this. So this is the HPX171 with my wireless mic going into it, and the Samsung Galaxy S10 which I'm using to record this. There you go. And then I can just pop this down here, hit the stop button, and there you go. Stops it on here as well. So, once you've shot your footage of Beyblading or falling off a building or something, you're going to want to capture in the footage. Now, this may seem daunting, it may seem complicated, but basically you want to be treating it as you were capturing from any other DV camera. Little precursory note. Now, you may be wondering, where's the computer? Well, I don't own a computer with a FireWire port, and actually that's not true. The computer I do own with a FireWire port, it's way too slow for actual use, shall we say. It's ancient, it's way too slow. So this is how I capture footage, but imagine this was a laptop running Final Cut Pro or Premiere Pro, Sony Vegas, or any other software which you would use to capturing your DV footage. All I'm doing is capturing it to the P2 and then dragging the P2 files onto my computer. It's basically the same process, so give me a break. So what you're going to want to do is turn on your computer, quotation marks. Then you want to open up the video capture feature, which in Premiere Pro would be under File, Final Cut Pro would be somewhat the same, Sony Vegas is also the same. There we go. So in my case, it's going to playback then thumbnail. Then I turn on the FS100. Now, if you wanted to do this like the Firestore was a hard drive, you would plug into the computer in and out right there, and you could drag and drop the files across. However, you can just capture the clips as if it were like a normal DV camera. So what you're going to want to do is go to the clip you want. So you've got one, so I've got 3 clips on here. I've got 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to start with 1, hit play, and there you go. There you go. So that's the clip I shot with the DVX just before. And then I can pause it, or I can fast forward it a little bit. Skip to the next clip. And there you go. Very, very simple. And then you can just capture it in on your computer, or in my case onto the camera. And there you go. It is literally that simple. Thank you, me, for doing that demonstration of the FS100. Now let's move on to the demonstration of the MRC1 by Pedro.
What's happening? I'm Pedro, me, and today I'm going to do a little something about the Sony HVR MRC1. So, what is the Sony HVR MRC1? Well, simply put, it's a data recorder. Records your VX footage via Firewire and records it onto CF card. So instead of using tapes, well, you use CF cards. And that's it, really. So yeah, it means you could just kick up the tapes and say turn off. The great thing is with CF cards, they're readily available compared to tapes. I use SanDisk. You don't have to use SanDisk. The one that came with it was some unknown brand. So they're fine enough, it's just you got to make sure they got the right speed. So this is 120 megabytes per second. I will post a little screenshot of the particular part where it mentions by SD cards. How do you use the device? Well, it's Firewire, 6-pin to 4-pin on the camera. Press these 2 record buttons here. And you don't press record on the camera because it's recording the image of the camera. It's not recording through the camera in the sense of like the tape is. Simply put, that's all you have to do to record with the device. Piece of piss. One thing you got to bear in mind when you're out filming this is that because it's not recording onto tape, it's not using a mechanism in the camera. It's going to go into standby mode. It's just going to want to fall asleep on you when you're out filming some good shit, and you don't want it to fall asleep on you when you're filming something really good, you know. So you don't have to whack the camera upside the head or anything like that. All you got to do is just press a button on the camera. Just press the zoom up button. If you film a fish, anyways, you just press that. It doesn't affect the footage, and it just makes the camera think, yeah, I'm alive, like, you know. And how do you power up the device? It does take VX batteries. It's very handy considering you're using a VX. I use the slim batteries. These are the F570, or you could use the bad boy ones. You could use the chonkers, the bad boys, the 960s. Use just the regular VX1 battery, 730s, 740s, whatever. They can all be used with the device. Slimmer ones are probably more ideal because it's going to be on the side of the camera and it don't weigh as much. So yeah. So here's a quick overview of the controls of the device and whatnot. You want to turn the damn thing on first of all. Once it loads in, you just use the 3 controls there, the play, next and back, to navigate the menu. So you just click menu, scroll on to delete, okay, format, okay. So you just click OK on that part there, click menu, it takes you back to that main page then. Another thing to do as well is to go to menu, scroll on to setting, just click on DV file type there, make sure that's set to raw DV. I think you can set it to AVI as well, I don't think it really matters. Quick overview of the buttons themselves, it's pretty simple. Record buttons, we have to press these simultaneously. Of course, like I said, the camera won't actually pick up the recordings, you have to do it on the device, not the camera itself. Unless you've got a tape in it, which you can, if it's, you know, with the VX cameras. Of course, you got stop as well, that's pretty simple, you just press stop when you finish recording. Sometimes this light here will flash for a little bit longer. Don't worry about it too much, but do pay attention to it that it's a solid red before pressing record. Of course, these ones as well, backwards, forwards, play. So now you just film something at home and he's like, yo, I want to see that shit, mate. You just go, alright, cool, you know, you just go backwards and forwards between the clips you filmed, find the one, press play on the camera. If you're using the VX cameras, of course, you can just press play on the camera, then play on this, and it should play straight away. If you're using a capture cam, same shit. To connect it to VX, put on the shoe mount on the top. Personally, I don't do that, as you can see with this mount here. I just got to mount the screws underneath. They're readily available, just go on Amazon. Measure them up just in case. You don't sit in too long, it's all the way up here. You don't sit in as too short because you want it to go by the side of your tape deck. Because you're not using the tape deck no more, you ain't got to worry about that shit. You just plug it in there, just screw it on the side. Bada bing, and I say connected. Some people will probably be thinking, well, what about the cable, the firewire cable? Well, just velcro it or tape it underneath. Now this one does pop out a little bit, but when I'm out filming I make sure it's nice and snug. But you know, when it's chill in my house, you can do whatever it wants. That's the thing. Cons and pros, right. Whenever someone says bad news or good news, what do you want to hear first? You always say bad news. You want to get that bad shit out of the way so you can look forward to the good shit. So let's get the cons out of the way then. First con is weight and space, I guess, with the bag. 2 things in one. I'll just say that, get out of the way. Now that being the weight and having that additional part stuck to your camera. You know, if you're so inclined, you can take it out and put it in the bag separately. I used to do that, but I thought more about it, and the more people I spoke with, that camera connection is going to wear with the constant being taken in and out all the time. So I just keep it plugged in and make room in the bag. So that's easily negotiated, just make room in the bag. And the weight with filming, you get used to it over time. I guess if you film for a couple of years with the VX and you film at night, especially with a fisheye, it's quite heavy, but you get used to it. It's the same with this. You do get used to it over time. Depends on you really, but it ain't really that heavy, you know. The second disadvantage, well, that would be the case of the cable, the wear and tear of the cable being kind of bent and underneath the camera, like that pressed down, and just general wear being plugged in and taken out. Just don't take it out every time, just leave it plugged in. Maybe just push it, you know, unscrew it like I done there, and put the battery in and take it out when you're not filming, and just keep it plugged in though to the side of the camera, and you know, you don't have to take the firewire cable out every time now. So the third con would be you need to make sure the firewire port on the back of your camera is working, because if that isn't working, then this device is totally useless basically. Yeah, that's something you need to think about before you go and buy one. So just simply hook it up to the computer. If the computer recognises the device when you turn it on, happy days. First pro, well, first and foremost, doesn't record onto tape. no glitches, bada bing, sorted. Second pro is the playback feature works on your VX, or if you're like me and take a capture cam out now, you can actually play back for the device, and it is the same as like playing a tape. It would just be getting the clip up, press play on the camera, and then press play in this, and it plays through. If you do have the playback feature working on your VX, happy days, because you don't even have to take the device out or anything. Play back as many times as you want because there's no wear on any heads or anything, so happy days. Of course, this is a really simple one, is that because you're not using the camera to record, the batteries last longer. I've noticed when I've been out filming, I haven't had to use many batteries, unless it's in the freezing cold, because the freezing cold zaps batteries. I think everybody in the UK knows about that, or if you live in Canada or some shit. If you do have the bigger batteries, you don't have the slim ones, you can just keep those on you, and you know, it should be enough to last a session now. One of the main and obvious pros of this, well, simply put, you're not putting any wear on the heads anymore. You're not using tapes, you're not having glitches, so you won't have to have it repaired as much. You don't have to worry about buying a clapped out VX1 on eBay just to replace the already clapped out one and get it and find out it is, well, clapped out, you know, it's already broke itself. Third point being is that you're not capturing tapes anymore. When it ain't the medieval times anymore, you don't have to sit there, wait for your tape to capture, go make a brew, go play with a dog, whatever, you know, read a book or some shit. So how do you get the footage from the device to the PC? There's two ways. Now, if you're like me, the first method may not work at all. That being that you plug it into the Firewire port on your computer like you would with a capture cam, and you bring up your capture device and you do it that way. It wouldn't work for me, possibly because I don't have an older version of Windows on there. I guess if you have Vista, God help you, 7, 8, God help you again, then you could. But like I said, I'm on a newer version of Windows. It didn't quite pick it up, it would connect, but I won't bore you with the details, it just didn't work. That brings me up to the second method, which is tried and true by myself. Using a card reader that plugs in by USB 3.0 or just USB 2.0. And just plug in the CF card into it and just put it in there, drag and drop the files. So basically it's like filming like HD, you know, you just drag and drop them, bada bing. Is there any difference in quality with the device compared to tape? No, there's no difference. Some people might tell you it's better, but it's raw DV, so it's going to be exactly the same. I've actually captured some clips so you can kind of see what I mean. It isn't the best VX1 golden crispy footage, I know. If you learn anything from the Blueprint videos, we got cold ass winters in the UK, and if you lived in Wales, we got the wet ass winters. So I haven't had any daytime footage, unfortunately, but the proof's in the pudding there, you know. And as a bonus footage, here's me slamming, filming with this device in my hand. There's two important things about this device. One of them being that these two are actually separate. This is the actual device, you know, that does all the filming doodah. This is the battery pack, the cradle. If you're looking for it online, just make sure that they both come together or that you can source the other part. But I will definitely say, as well as the second part being that there's firmware you need to put on them. Although to be fair, it's 2020, these devices are over 10 years old. It should already have it if someone's used it within that span. It just lets you run the faster and the bigger size CF cards. However, that will be in the document. I will put a screenshot of at the end so you can pause the video and have a little look. So yeah, that's it on the Sony HVR MRC1. Is it the future of the VX? Yeah, I'd say so, but some people may be put off because of the price. Some people are, you know, committed to the whole, like, it's got to be on tape, it may as well go HD, or whatever, you know, that shit don't matter to me. But like, if you really want to stick to VXs, you're sick and tired of paying for the heads and whatnot, then yeah, get one of these, you know, if you can find one. I mean, if you're more into the other devices or the cheap or whatever, yeah, cool. But this one, for me, it works great because I can use the batteries, as I already said, you know, it connects up fine, and yeah, so that's all I gotta really say. I guess if you've got any questions about it, you can find me on Instagram, Pedro Main, or find me on the Slack forums. You can send me some hate mail, some nasty ass shit directly to me on there. But yeah, that's it. I'll see you now in a minute. Ta-ra for now.
Big shout out to Pedro there for making that for me. You gotta admit, the MK1 on that VX, magnifique, beautiful, beautiful. And well, here we are. It's been a long ride, but you finally made it. Hopefully you haven't ran out of too much wine, because I just want to quickly talk about something. So my final thought on all of this is the fact that the DN60 and the MRC1 are by far the best things you can go for. The size of them, the batteries, and the ease of use make these the two greatest tapeless solutions you can get. If you can only get an FS100, it'll still work, but you have to be wary of the size of it and the battery. The battery is going to be the thing that really ruins this device in the future, mainly because it uses its own specialized batteries compared to the AA's of the DN60 and the MPF batteries of the MRC1. Now, although these products are over 10 years old, it has been within the last couple of years that filmers have been starting to use them. And with that, it's still quite early days, and so there's not been a lot of flushing out of how to use them, rigging and shit like that. As more and more people use them, and as tape stock starts to dwindle even more and basically vanish out of existence, more and more people will figure things out, better solutions for them, and hopefully, maybe, build something even better. But it's 2020, still. But for now, you're working with this. So hopefully this guide's been somewhat helpful to you, and, well, hopefully it's been the guide to your tapeless freedom and all that shit. If I have to say tapeless solution one more time, I'm gonna fucking shit myself. I swear to God. So that's it for this video. It's been a long one. It's been chocker full of information, but hopefully it's been helpful. Big shout out to Al and Pedro for helping me make this video. I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you to anyone who sent me in suggestions or just supported me throughout the making of this fucking video. Hopefully, I'll see you next time. Fucking let me stop. Please let me stop. Please, that was way too long.